Hi guys, welcome to Motorhome Rehab Ranch. If you have a GMC Motorhome, like to have one, and just want to learn more about it, you're in the right place. And a special shout out to our ranch hands that helps us by supporting us to be able to make more videos, to answer questions and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the video, I'll tell you how you can also be a ranch hand. But right now, let's get into something about a GMC that maybe you know, maybe you don't. See what happens. Hi guys, how about that? This is Jim Bounds with Motorhome Rehab Ranch on Patreon and Co-op Motorworks. Here's an original fuel tank. It's not in good shape. Got water in it, first of all, it's been sitting around, but it's rusted, okay? Ethanol fuel, alcohol and water, doesn't like metal tanks. Your motorhome has 2 of these 25-gallon metal tanks, all right? You say, what's the half-life of a metal tank with ethanol in it? About now. It's coming apart. These things are dropping like flies. These are the latest removals because they were leaking, rust inside them, what have you. By the way, some useless trivia. Fuel tank cut in half is worth $2. Just keep that in mind. Not worth much, okay? Some tanks are still in good shape, but the older the coaches get, older the tanks are going to get. If you drop your tanks down, I'm going to show you how to do that. And if your tanks are in real good shape, you look inside with a camera and you don't have any rust in there, that kind of thing, then you can reuse them, okay? But if there's rust in there, if you look inside and it's pretty nasty and there's rust in there, you could say you could have it lined. There is no guarantee when they do a tank lining because they've got to slosh it around. There's all kinds of baffles and what have you in here. And if that liner doesn't stick, then it'll leak again. And there is no guarantee. It's not their fault. It's just that the medium is not a guaranteed medium, okay? So the real answer is to put a new aluminum tank in it. But let's for right now, let's say you drop your tanks and they both look really good and we're going to put them back in. So let's go over and look at a coach. I'm going to show you how to do that, how to drop the original tanks, replumb them, and put them back in, all right? Come on with me. Okay, guys, we're under a GMC on our lift. By the way, this is how to do it. If you're going to work on your tanks on the ground, it's not fun, okay? You got to get it up in the air. Okay, you got to have all 6 wheels off the ground. You need it to be level to make your job easier. But anyway, so these are original tanks and they're put up. This is completed. The tanks have been shot with Por 15 and then undercoated to protect them for the future from the outside. The tanks were in great shape, so we put new seals, new socks, and new cinders. Okay, the hoses, there is a minimum of 56 feet of vent hose in this thing alone, okay? If your fuel hoses are more than 5 years old, they're non-ethanol, because 5 years ago we didn't know how bad ethanol was for ethanol. I mean, ethanol was for synthetic fuel hose, rubber fuel hose, because it dries it out, it makes it hard. You have to go with a ethanol lined hose. A hose like Gates Barricade is what we use. It has a liner that resists ethanol, okay? So if you're going to do this today, don't use the cheap hose. Use ethanol resistant hose. There's a lot of different ones, okay? It just has to be able to deal with ethanol fuel. Why? Because that's our fuel supply. There is some non-ethanol fuel, and whenever there's some there, I try to use it. Better for the motor, better for a lot of things. But if you don't have it, you have to be prepared to pump in ethanol-laced fuel and your tanks need to be prepared. All right. One of the things you want to put in is a fuel filter. We put in a cleanable fuel filter because we know there's going to be some rust, there's going to be some sand and silt going into it. An original Rochester carburetor has a 5-micron filter in the front of it because Rochester knew if anything bigger than 5 microns got into their carburetor, it's screwed. Okay. Now, fuel injection is a little bit better, and we're putting fuel injection to this one. But it's still, you've got to have a good, reliable 10-micron filter all the time. Phytech makes one that's replaceable. Cleanable. You can take it apart, you can clean it up and put it back in. That's the one we recommend and use. Even if you had a carburetor, I would put that in to protect the 5-micron. Make sure that you have, if you have a carburetor, make sure you have a Wix 330-48 little filter, canister filter about the size of your thumb. Put it in the glove box because it will clog up. Fuel today will cause this tank to throw rust into your filter, period. It just will. Okay. Now, this coach, like I said, is going to have fuel injection. When you have fuel injection, you have 2 tanks. The fuel system needs to pull the fuel out of and put the fuel back in to the same tank. Okay. So here is the filter we talked about. In here is an AB selector valve like the one we have in the coach, but it also selects the returns, right? So to make sure that you pull fuel, say, out of the rear tank, it returns it back into the rear tank. If you go to the front tank, it pulls it out of and puts it back in to the front tank, okay? So that's something you'll need to add if you're going to keep your 2 tanks and you're going to go to fuel injection. If you're going to stay with a carburetor, that's fine. Eventually you'll have to do it, but you'll have to add some band-aids, like we put a second electric fuel pump on the front fuel tank. So when you flip your selector, you have a pusher pump to push the vapor lock through because, like I said, the fuel is ethanol laced. It has a lower boiling point, so it vapor locks much more. Having a band-aid of a second small, cheap electric fuel pump to push the vapor lock through when you're using a carburetor is almost a necessity. You need a countermeasure. You need a backup. When you're doing a fuel injection, the electric fuel pump pretty much takes care of that, and fuel injection doesn't have the problem. Actually, the fuel injection is the right adapter for this new fuel that we're using, the ethanol lace and all kinds of other stuff that's in it. Fuel injection is the proper adapter, okay? These 2 fuel tanks would be just fine for fuel injection because we're swapping the returns, we're swapping the feeds. That's fine. We have new ethanol resistant hose. Up in the driver's side rear wheel well is, and you've seen a little box, it's called a fuel vapor separator. We replaced those, and actually we put a second one of those in many cases to be able to get more venting to the original tanks. That's the problem. These tanks don't have good venting. There's a single 5/16 line that runs all the way up behind the passenger, underneath the passenger front seat to the canister, and then it goes to the motor. That's not enough venting for 2 25-gallon, 4.5-inch deep tanks. So we want to add more venting. Okay, we have a package that has all the hose, fuel vapor separators, seals, all the parts you would need to put your original tanks back up in there. I believe it's $650. It's got everything in it. Goes to the generator, to the engine, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Right now is the time we have to do this because, you know, you say out of sight, out of mind. You don't see these hoses, but believe me, they're under there. And if you look under there and you see they're cracked, if it sucks air, if that hose cracks enough to suck air, you're done. Get a flatbed. Okay. So hoses are very important, and whether you have a single aluminum tank like we're putting in when the tanks are garbage, or you have 2 good original tanks, having the correct hoses, having it vented, having it switched properly, having backups for your carburetor, or if you're going to run fuel injection, have the right selectors. These are things you have to consider when you're doing the fuel system. You have to deliver fuel to the motor. A lot of times we'll pick up a coach, or we'll find a coach. First thing you do, you never hook up the fuel system. The fuel's 10 years old, that stuff's shellac, it's garbage. So you take a boat tank, you hook it up. I actually drove a motorhome from Ambler, Pennsylvania to Orlando on a 6.5 gallon fuel tank. We got real good at filling the tank up on the fly. It was awesome. Don't do it. Don't do this at home, okay? But the fuel system is so important, and especially a 45-year-old machine like this, you've got to deliver clean fuel, okay? All right, well, look, I appreciate you being with us here. If you'd like to become a ranch hand and help support us by doing these videos and stuff, it's $5 a month. If you click on the, I believe we're going to have a click below on this video. You can click there, it'll go right to it, and you can sign up, and we appreciate that. And we're going to come up with all kinds of videos, all kinds of cool stuff. Give me some input, tell me some things you want to see, and we'll do it. Hey, wait a minute, we forgot something. We were talking about dropping the tanks. I didn't talk about dropping the tanks. Let me tell you how to do it. All right, if you have a lift like this, you're really in great shape. If you don't have a lift, you need to get the whole coach off the ground. You need to have a transmission jack. If you have like this, you want a transmission jack that's on the ground. There's one around here. It comes right up to here. You pump it up, it grabs the tank, it supports the tank. First step. Second step, you have where's the drain? Yeah, you have a drain on these tanks right here. Okay, drain's leaking a little. If you can get this out, you spray it with some degreaser and some PB Blaster or whatever. Put a big long breaker bar, you tighten it, you loosen it. Tighten, loosen, tighten, loosen. If you can get it to move, it'll come out. If you can't, right, go to your fill right here. There's a 90-degree elbow on the rear tank. Take the fill loose and back off. Put a tray under there and it'll dump down to the last 5 gallons. You can get it out that way. There's a 90-degree elbow on the rear tank and there's a straight elbow going in the front tank. You can drain the tanks that way, okay? Okay, so we've got the jack stand or something here holding it. On this side, there are 2 J-bolts right here. One here and here. And they're probably rusted to hell. When you put it back in, you can take a piece of all thread and make a J-bolt and put it in. So if you have to cut them off, then just cut them off. Okay? Up in the front side, you can see the strap here is riveted to an L bracket. L bracket comes up here and there are 3 bolts right here. You take those 3 bolts loose. Now the tank's loose. Okay? Drop your jack down. You've already got the inlets cut off, so that's not going to be in the way. That's going to drop right down. You'll get to the rest of the hoses. You can take them off, tilt the tank, get the last 5 gallons out of it, and you drop it down. Oh, but there's more. There's a second tank. Do the same thing. You know, Henry Ford's first car had bicycle tires. This one will probably take you an hour, hour and a half to get out. This one will probably take 45 minutes. You got 2 of them. So you want to drop the tanks down, get the fuel out of them, see where the hoses were. There are some valleys cut into the fuel tanks in the top, and that's where the fuel lines need to be. So when you put them back up in there, you're going to duct tape them in place. Because if you shove the tank up in there and the hose gets out of that valley, it'll crush the hose. Okay? So take a look at that, see how it's put in, understand what's there. You got a fuel line, a feed line going to the generator. You got 2 feed lines coming up here to an AB solenoid. From here it goes to the fuel tank. That's where you put the filter. Fuel line comes off of each tank, goes to the AB solenoid. You've got a vent from each tank that goes over to the wheel liner, where the vapor separators are, right? And then you've got a line going all the way to the front so when it burps back, it stops the fuel hose. So there's a whole pile of hoses under here. You got to change them all. Okay, so you got the tanks down, you look at them, hey, they're great. Put new socks in them, new seals, a seal on the top. Put new hoses on them, serve them back up in there. You make your new J-bolts, wherever you got it out, you're a lucky boy. Tie them up here, you got 3 bolts here, it's back up in here. In our kit, has new 90-degree elbow. It's a weird size, it's like a 1 1/8 inch size or 1 1/4. Can't buy it. We have them. We got all the inlet hoses, we got all the other hoses, everything in a package that I give my tech to come here and do this. We have that available to you. So, yeah, I forgot to tell you how to take them out. Sorry about that. All right, so other questions, anything else? More on this, give me a call. See you later.